Well, hello friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS Office Hours. As you probably know, I never trust that I actually managed to start the stream, so I am going to wait for somebody to say something. All right. Signs of life. Hello, everybody. Very good. It really does seem to work every time. I just get a little bit paranoid. I don't know why. The UI is kind of confusing. All right. So people are clearly hearing me and probably seeing me too. Very good to have you all here. And yeah, it's Friday. So we're going to do what we always do on Fridays. Take questions about SerenityOS or programming related topics, and then we'll talk about whatever comes up. Jeja is asking, how is the side quest doing? Man, I've been on a side quest for weeks now, and it keeps mutating and changing, but now I'm on a track that I really like, and I think this is it. So I'm gonna work on it for a few more days, and then and then we'll probably take a look at it. But yeah, it's definitely shaping up. The side quest is basically a slight secret project that I'm working on, and it's not going to be secret for long. It's just secret because I want to avoid extreme bike shedding, let's say. So just need to get a few details in order, and then we'll take a big look together. Eric says the monthly update video was awesome. Yeah, I thought so too. I was so happy with that. It really came out long, I guess is the word I would use. It was like 56 minutes. And I was so happy that we could get another host. So Kleines Filmröllchen agreed to talk about audio stuff, which was a great addition. And it really feels like the more people share what they're working on, the more fun it is to watch these things. I really also love the community showcase videos, of course, but maybe that would be like a bit too crowded to have like 10 people in the monthly updates and they would go for 3 hours. But I don't know. I mean, we're clearly still experimenting and finding the perfect format, but it was fun with this last really long one. A Breja says, are you connecting Serenity to the metaverse with NFTs? No, I'm not doing that. Vishnu asks, is the side quest related to Serenity? Yes, of course. Everything I do is related to Serenity in one way or another. So it is definitely something that will become part of Serenity when I show it to you. But we'll see when we get there. All right. Let's see. NBVD Camp says, I liked how the update video almost turned into the community showcase with so many people joining. Right. Yes, I did like that too. And I like that everybody is a good sport and they all make the little webcam windows and everything. Makes for a nice visual experience. I know that I got a bunch of people asking about the resolution in the update video, so we ended up using a bit too high resolution. That was my mistake. Basically, one of us recorded with a wrong resolution, and then I just asked everybody else to record with the same resolution so that person wouldn't have to re-record. And if I had if I had been more informative about the resolution up front, then we wouldn't have had this issue. So in the future, we're gonna have more legible resolution for people on phones and stuff like that. Let's see. Block Builder says, I really appreciated between all the guests and when showing themes, you even edited the webcam window. Aha. Well, so a lot of people ask about that, and it's kind of funny. Let me actually show you how that works. So I have this little program called Webcam, and let me actually build it into the system. It's not normally part of the system, but I'll just add it here. So this is what I usually do when I record monthly videos, that I have this little program on screen, and then I put my webcam on top of that. And because of that, it's a live running program in Serenity, so I can switch to theme and it just follows along. So some people thought that I was like editing the video afterwards to change the look of the webcam window, but it actually is just rendered live, although without the video itself, of course. Mati says, assume that we have device that has 1 megabyte mapped memory in address space. It means that 1 megabyte of physical memory will never be used? 1 megabyte mapped memory in address space. I'm not sure exactly what the question means. 1 megabyte mapped memory. Can you maybe rephrase that? I don't really understand the question. Sheodox says, Andreas, when you want to get work done but are just not in the mood, what do you do? So I guess what I typically do is I find something to do that I want to do, and I do that for a bit, because I tend to have enough projects going on at the same time that there's always something that I feel like doing. And Serenity is a huge playground, right? Like there's everything that you could ever want to work on, all in one code base. So it makes it pretty easy. Even if you're not motivated to do the specific thing that you had in mind, you can usually find something else. And at least that's sort of how I set it up for myself. So I look for something that I actually feel like doing and do that instead. But if you're talking about like getting work done where you don't get to choose what you do, that is of course a bit different. But I find that with that sort of thing, you just have to apply discipline and kind of do it anyway. It's a lot like eating healthy food or going to the gym, but like you don't necessarily want to do these things in the moment, but you recognize that if you apply yourself and do them anyway, then it has sort of a long-term reward to it. I don't know. It's I've always had a hard time when I try to rely on motivation for these things. I sometimes feel motivated to work on random stuff, and I sometimes don't feel motivated, but it's not reliable. Like I don't wake up every day feeling motivated, but I do wake up every day with some amount of discipline. So that is something that you can rely on. Like you can rely on discipline. If you build it up for yourself, you can always call on discipline to drive you through any task. So I guess that would be my recommendation, to work on becoming more disciplined, because then you won't need motivation. That was a bit of a scattered answer. Sorry about that, but I hope you understand what I mean. Let's see. Graham says, the community showcases and the monthly updates are growing, and it's awesome. It's also a really good experience for developers, and they can also use it on resumes and job interviews. I love it when I see people putting Serenity on their resumes. That is one of the funnest things for me personally. I've seen people putting it on their LinkedIn or like even in their resumes that they send in for job applications. And I heard people actually talking about it in job interviews. That is just wild to me. That's so much fun. So if I really feel like if I can provide some kind of platform where people can sort of show off cool stuff that they do in their spare time, and they can then use that material to further their own careers and stuff, that's awesome. Very, very awesome. J Tai says, which font do you like on SerenityOS? Well, I really like this default font, Kotica, that we're looking at right now. It is definitely one of my favorites, but I have a handful of fonts that I like, I suppose. Let's take a look at them. So this one is the default system font, Kotica 10. It also comes in a 12 size, which is a bit larger, and I guess it's okay, but there's something about this one that I just really, really enjoy. It's when I originally made it, it was based on Visual Studio and Office 97, sort of the Tahoma font and Verdana font that were commonplace on Windows platforms back in the Office 97 times. And I wanted to make something very similar to that, but like not exactly the same, but very similar. And I think that it came out pretty close. And also very awesomely, I love it that nowadays, like I don't even draw any font lifts anymore, but other people do. And they've sort of continued in the same style when drawing all these characters in other languages and stuff, which, I don't know, there's something so cool about that, because I'm definitely not a graphic designer. I'm more of a graphic imitator, I guess. I can imitate stuff, but the people who are drawing all of our fonts these days, they are so diligent and really awesome at what they do. And I don't know, it's just something so awesome to me that people can take a style and then just continue in that same style. Anyway, I really like this one. Let's see. Lorenzo says, hi, Andreas. I noticed that if a GUI application has an empty menu, when this menu is pressed, it crashes the whole Windows server. I think there should be a null check to avoid this. I ask you why. I'm not sure it's a bug or expected behavior. Well, let's think about that for a moment. Does it seem like a good behavior that the whole Windows server crashes ever? Probably not. So I would say that's a bug, something we should fix. And that's really probably just missing a null check somewhere that we can just add. Also, the EN down here looks kind of goofy. Don't know what's up with that. Maybe it's because I was changing the changing the system font and then no? Okay, well, I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, I think that's a bug and it should be fixed. We need a null check somewhere, probably in Windows Server. Windows Server shouldn't crash just because a client does something unexpected or weird. What it should do is disconnect that client. If Windows Server is sort of a shared resource that all GUI programs on the system use, so it should behave reliably no matter what its clients do, I guess. Let's see. Unlucky AF says, did you implement STL and C libraries yourself or use the ones online? The code in Serenity is implemented by ourselves. It's not like using an existing C library or standard library or anything like that. It is something that we make ourselves. Let's see. Marius says, hi, Andreas. Sorry if this was asked multiple times, but what are the reasons for not using the standard library? It is not uncommon to roll your own containers, but ACK even has its own alternatives to std move, std remove reference, etc. So the main reason, and yes, this has been asked probably 100 times, but that's okay. The main reason is because it's fun, and because when we make it ourselves, then we can make it look and behave exactly the way that we like. We don't have to bring in, 30 years of STL development and all of the weird things that come along with that. I think everybody who's worked with C++, they know that if you include the STL in your project is now gigantic, and it has tons and tons of code in it suddenly, and tons of, kind of ancient code, ancient ways of doing things. So I wanted to have like a completely clean slate for the programming environment in Serenity, where we can just do the things that we want to do. And if we don't like it, it's completely within our power to change it. And primarily for fun, but also it makes the system a lot more lightweight. I was messing around with some stuff last year where I was writing the same program using ACK and STL just to check side by side. And at least, I don't know, it was like 6 months ago or something, but the programs written with STL typically took about 10 times longer to compile, which was pretty crazy. So these were small programs just for testing, but there's just so much more code in the STL, and ACK is really, really lightweight by comparison. So that is a nice benefit. And then there's kind of less important stuff like aesthetics. Like, we can make it look the way that we want, and we don't have to conform to the arbitrary weird names that the STL uses, where they abbreviate some things and write some things out completely. In Serenity, we like to use this very verbose naming style for stuff, right? So we have, in our vector class, for example, we have ensure capacity. And I don't even know if STL has that, but I'm sure that they wouldn't give it such a long name because they typically don't. So little things. Anyway, let's see. Oh, James Pulio is joining the Yak herd. Thank you very much for that. And enjoy the golden yak and associated emojis. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. DJ Wisdom said, Andreas, default theme is a light type of theme. Is there a default dark for dark type? There is no default dark for dark type. Daniel says, when the time comes, will you transition the project to C++ modules? Well, that depends. If C++ modules offer some tangible benefit, so if they allow us to compile the system faster, or if they improve performance, or if they give us something that improves something tangibly, measurably, then yeah, we'll probably try to make use of it. But we have to look at the pros and cons. So pending evaluation, I guess. I saw that Sea Lion had on their roadmap, I think, for the upcoming season to work on C++ module support. So it does sound like tooling is starting to wake up. That's promising. Okay, Mati says, I was thinking about the situation where when we have installed 1 megabyte of physical RAM in our computer, and we have a device at, for example, address 0 that consumes 500K of memory for VRAM. So I guess I don't understand what is the problem with that. I mean, if you have memory mapped devices that are not RAM, then sure, they take a chunk of your address space so that they can be memory mapped. So if you have a 32-bit device, you have 4 gigabytes of address space. So on a 32-bit device, if you have 1 gigabyte of memory mapped hardware devices that are not RAM, that leaves you with, I guess, 3 gigabytes of addressable physical RAM. and then you would have to do something like bank switching or something like that, I guess. I don't know how that would work. I'm not aware that of that being a thing on PC systems, at least. But in a 64-bit machine, there's definitely no shortage of physical address space. So it sounds like a problem potentially for 32-bit machines, but I don't think you would have it on 64-bit anytime soon. It's going to take a very long time before we fill up 64-bit address range. Hein says, "Hi Andreas, I wanted to ask, how are you so fast with git commit-p? It takes me a second to read each chunk to decide if it belongs to a commit, and you just breeze through them. Any tips?" I guess when you're looking at the commit, or at least in my case, when I look at a commit and I look at the different hunks, I typically know what they are already. So I'm just sanity checking them very quickly. And I guess the reason I can do it fast is because I tend to work with pretty small commits. So there's less stuff to remember what it is, and there's less stuff to look at. And really, when I'm doing like git add-p, what I'm really trying to do is make sure that nothing that doesn't belong in the commit gets in. So it's more like screening for stuff that should be in a separate commit. So my tip is to apply the strongest atomic commit discipline that you can. So make sure that your commits are as small as possible, and then you will have less stuff to look at, and you can look at it faster. Gabriel says, "Where are all the videos? We need those 2-hour deep dives into internals. No more web stuff." Well, I haven't been making videos, programming videos for a while, because I am working on a side project, which is coming out soon, but not just yet. But once it does, then I will definitely be making videos about something non-web related. So we'll see then. Let's see. Calculated Risk Taker says, "Andreas, do we need access to bootloader in order to run SerenityOS on an ARM CPU? I know currently it's only x86, but do we need to change more than the source code?" Well, I don't really know what that means. Do you need to change more than the source code? Ultimately, there's not much more we can change other than the source code. I don't know the specifics of how booting on ARM CPUs works with Serenity. We have a channel on Discord that's specifically about porting to 64-bit ARM. So if you join the AArch64 channel on Discord, you can find all of the people who are working on this, and they will give you all of the accurate details instead of me giving you inaccurate details. Let's see. Ecoptic says, "Hello, Andreas." Hello, Ecoptic. "What is your favorite thing to work on the Serenity? Is it the desktop environment / GUI stuff, or something else?" So what is my favorite thing? I don't think I have a favorite thing. I love working on all the different parts at different times. So at any given time, there's like some part that I really like working on, but it keeps changing. Sometimes I go for months just working on browser stuff. Other times I go for a month just working on the kernel or the desktop. And in the beginning of the system, when everything was kind of low quality and crappy and everything needed a lot of work, I found myself jumping around a lot more often. But lately, as the system matures and becomes a bit more stable, I find that I can spend a bit longer with each part, which is really nice, because you do need to spend a bit longer with more mature systems when you want to do something with them. I mean, in the beginning, when something is really small, it's easy to go fast and do a lot of stuff quickly. But as it matures, you need to put in a bit more time. So I really don't have a favorite. I just jump between things. Eric says, "How do the Serenity STL and C libraries compare to the standard ones?" Well, I would encourage you to take a look at them yourself to answer that question. James Pulio with the Golden Yak says, "Hey Andreas, I wanted to thank you for starting libjs and everyone else who continued to work on it so wonderfully. I've recently embedded libjs into a project, and it's so nice to work with. That is so awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Man, how cool is that? I would love to know more about the details of how that's going, and what kind of pain points you had, what kind of tweaks you had to make, stuff like that. But I am also super thankful and proud of all the people who continue to work on libjs. And I've thought about that sometimes, especially lately, about how I've become this person who kind of starts things and then sketch out a bunch of stuff, and then other people come and they make it 10 times better by working on it. And in the past, that was not really something I ever did. I was always that one of those people who would come in and make it better. And it's so interesting. At least it's interesting to me to see it from the other side of it, to be that person who spawns new things. Having been on the other side of it, and I don't know which is more enjoyable. But I guess, like, if the thing doesn't exist, then somebody has to put it into existence. So I'm fine with doing that. But I guess I sometimes miss the other side of it, like where you just join something and make it a lot better. Although I suppose I can just transition to that seamlessly by not making new things for Serenity, but instead working on the existing things. Anyway, just something I've been thinking about. But yeah, that's super awesome. Super glad to hear it. That's so cool. And please tell me more. And please join the Discord server and tell us in the JS channel about how that's going. That would be so much fun. Oh, and welcome to the Ackherd, Joachim Lundborg. Very nice to have you here as well. Enjoy your golden yak. Let's see. David Palmer says, I think that's such a great way to think about it. Programming should be fun. Yes, absolutely it should. Especially with something that people do in their spare time. I think for a project like Serenity, we really have to prioritize fun in a way that maybe like a corporate open source project wouldn't. But in order to attract people and make it like worthwhile for people to spend their evenings and weekends with us and doing this together, I think it needs to be fun to work on the system. So there are certain things that we have to sacrifice sometimes for fun. And I think that's a worthwhile sacrifice to make. Like, you can sacrifice a little bit of stability or security or performance or rigidity or whatever, if it means that we can have twice as much fun. Now, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't give up on everything and only have fun, but I think fun has to factor into it all the time. It has to be something that we're consciously steering towards. Alexander Stix says, how much does typing speed matter for programming efficiency in your opinion? Very little, in my opinion. I think at least for me personally, it really doesn't matter if I can type fast or slow. I think a lot faster than I type, so I can never keep up with that anyway. Yeah, I'm not sure that matters. I know some people think that it matters and you have to have like the super fast keyboards and whatever, but and I'm not here to tell anybody what to spend their money on. But in my experience, programming is more about thinking than typing. And if it isn't, then maybe your programming language is excessively verbose. I don't know. Let's see. Jonas Lindbard says, any experience in game dev worth mentioning? I would love to see you fiddle around with NES. I don't have any real experience with game dev. I've made game console emulators in the past, and that was a lot of fun. I've also made like debug ROMs for Game Boy and NES to test emulators, but I never really did games properly. I've also started hacking on a small number of games and spent like a weekend on them and then just giving up because it wasn't interesting to me. I think probably all programmers go through that phase, or maybe a set of phases recurring, where you think that, oh, I'm just going to make games. But I always fall out of those phases pretty quickly. Let's see. Ryder Hitchhike says, is this side project also something we can suss at by looking at your Serenity commit history? That seems unlikely, but you can try. It's not really visible from that. Even Kai says, side project, LLVM support. Nope. The literal definition of bruh says, any opinions on the Unix philosophy in the context of SerenityOS? The Unix philosophy, well, I guess you're referring to the whole thing about small tools, like small composable tools with text input and text output or whatever, that you can pipe together, or you should have all these small tools that all do one thing well. I like that for the command line. I like command line interfaces to be composable. I think that's neat. But Serenity is also a GUI system, obviously, and I've had some ideas at times about like composable GUI stuff, but it never goes past the idea stage for me. Like I come up with something that, oh, you could connect these two different programs together and then make a pipe between them somehow that they work together on whatever. But I don't know. It just never seems to materialize into any kind of cohesive concept, at least in my brain. And I kind of lose interest before I even try to prototype any of these ideas. And yeah, I don't know. There's also the issue of security with GUI applications, because command line apps tend to be much simpler than GUI apps, and it's easier to sandbox them. Whereas GUI applications typically use more of the system resources, right? Like they speak to the Windows server and they do various, they load various file formats for, for images and fonts and all kinds of stuff. So they just have a greater surface area, and making them composable and scriptable, might open up more vulnerabilities in those surface areas. So it's a bit of a confusing space to me. I don't know exactly what to do with it, but I would be happy to look at prototypes if people have some ideas. Virtual Fly says, does Serenity have a tracing system like systrace in Android, which we could visually see what's going on in the system in a timeline? We have a profiler, and that's, I guess, the closest thing to that. We don't really have, it's not like a generic system events trace that you get. You get CPU samples. Although we do have, there is sort of a framework underneath it that would allow to create more generic system events traces. It's just that we don't have the UI for it, basically. We already support emitting events for kernel allocations, deallocations, memory mappings, even file I/O events, I think. So let's see, we have this performance event. No, what's it called? Perf event. Yeah, we have the perf event system, and it can create all these different things. These are the different types of performance events that we have. Read is file system IO or file system read. And yeah, we can definitely expand on this and log more types of events. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Vishnu says, writing everything from scratch is often looked down on, called reinventing the wheel. How would you convince others that rewriting from scratch is nice instead of gluing existing libraries? Well, how do you convince others that rewriting is nice? I guess the first part is to recognize that rewriting stuff from scratch is not always nice. It's definitely not nice if you are, doing a work project and you have a deadline and like you're doing this on somebody else's time, then it's not always the nicest thing to do to rewrite everything from scratch just because it's fun. Or because you believe that you're going to get better performance or whatever. There's a time and a place to rewrite stuff from scratch or to do things from scratch. Or there are many times and many places. And if you are in one of those times and places, then it's a lot of fun. You can learn a lot of stuff. If you do it well, you can often get better performance than stock alternatives because you can make your implementation more tailored to the specific use case. So that is a big plus. But of course, it also costs you more time implementing it and debugging it and so on. But I guess I never really try to convince people that rewriting from scratch is nice. I mean, to me, I already know that it's something that I enjoy doing, so I do it, but at the same time, I also compartmentalize it because it's not always appropriate. And Serenity is nice in that way because it's a project where everybody's welcome to build things from scratch, and there isn't anybody who's going to say like, oh, no, there's already a library for that on GitHub, let's just use that. In Serenity, it's a safe haven for people who like to build things from scratch, I suppose. Let's see. Leorian says, so ARM is a mess when it comes to boot process and it gets ugly fast. For instance, the Raspberry Pi lineup uses 2 boot stages on the video core followed by 2 stages on the ARM CPU. Yeah, I have no idea how that works. I should probably learn more about it. That does sound a bit complicated to do all those handovers, but I assume that you don't have to write source code for all 4 stages of that boot. If you do, that is pretty confusing. EverAid says, do you sometimes put yourself in SerenityOS's shoes? I don't know what that even means, but maybe I do. DJ Wisdom says, having info that even parts of SerenityOS can be used successfully in another project sounds very heartwarming. Makes everyone that contribute to SerenityOS feel proud, yet humbled at the same time. Yeah, I definitely feel proud and humbled that people see our project and they see some part of it that they're like, oh, wow, we can definitely make use of that in some other context. And because of our permissive licensing, and yeah, because of our permissive licensing, really, and our very, in my mind, reusable modular code base, it's apparently possible to just extract code and make use of it. So very, very happy to hear that, and proud too, I suppose. Phoenix Firewings says, hey, Awesome Kling, do you think you will ever hack on libgl? Maybe. I don't know. Sophia says, have you ever messed around with Stackbased /postfix / concatenative languages? I'm sometimes working on a functional postfix language Polka, and I feel like there is something extremely elegant about it. I have to admit, I have never messed around with these types of languages more than 5 minutes. So I don't have any opinions on them as to whether they're elegant or clumsy or anything. Like I couldn't tell you. But whenever I see people having fun with something, the only thing that I think is, I mean, if I see people having fun with something I don't know about or don't understand, I just always remind myself, don't question this. This person is having fun. Just let them. And maybe I would have fun with it too if I actually looked into it. So it goes on the very long, infinitely long list of things I need to look into. Adrian, joining the yak herd as well. Thank you very much for the support. Enjoy the golden yak and other emojis. PTE says, what's your secret sauce for being such a versatile developer? Are you super smart, or do you just spend way too much time than everyone else? Well, I don't know if there's a secret sauce. I definitely work really, really hard and spend a lot of time on things. So I think that's most of it. And I also don't give up when most other people would. So I think it's a combination of I'm willing to put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I'm not going to give up just because something is difficult or takes a long time. I think that's probably like 80% of it. And then maybe 20% of it is that I'm, a reasonably intelligent person. Like I'm not super special or anything, but I can think my way out of some situations. Just like you probably. So I'm not held back by my brain, I think, but it's also not like miraculous in some way. I think I'm more of a hard worker than a hard thinker. Let's see. Kook says, are GUI/graphics done only with the CPU? Are there any GPU drivers? What about performance? Does Serenity only redraw things that actually need to be redrawn? If yes, what is the algorithm? Well, that's a lot of questions. So at the moment, we do all of our graphics on the CPU. So it's software rasterization all the way. In some parts of the system, we use vector instructions, so SIMD, to accelerate stuff by doing like 4 operations in parallel. It's used extensively in the 3D code, and we also use it for some of the color blending stuff in 2D painting. But there's no GPU acceleration, and performance is totally acceptable for what we're currently doing. There are definitely things that we cannot do with the current performance. I mean, you can only do so much if you are manually drawing 1 to 4 pixels at a time with the CPU, of course. Like, but for the types of user interfaces and stuff that we're doing, it's certainly serviceable. And it hasn't really been a problem for the system so far. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look towards supporting GPU acceleration, but performance is pretty okay even without it. And there's always effort to only redraw what needs to be redrawn. So we do keep track of dirty rectangles or invalidated rectangles. So for example, if I move, I don't know, like if I select different things or hover over different things here, then we will only repaint the thing that actually changes. And that is done by collecting invalidation rectangles and passing those between the client application and the Windows system. And there's overdraw sometimes, especially in the web engine. It's pretty aggressively overdrawing, but there is infrastructure for passing specific rectangles through to the painting code so that only those get painted. It just needs to be used more. And yeah, like everything else in the system, there's room for improvement. But I don't know if there's a specific algorithm that I would point to. There's just a lot of plumbing of dirty rects. Marco Santos says, hi, how is your Minecraft world going? So I haven't even been logged into our Minecraft realm for a few weeks. So I made this realm for my nephew and myself a while back, and we were playing in it. But now my nephew got into Roblox, which is like dominating his computer lately. And I have to say, I don't particularly enjoy Roblox. I feel like they're constantly trying to like reach into my wallet while I'm using it. It's always like you click on something and then it says, well, not right now, but if you give me some Robux, you can click on it. And that to me is very unpleasant. I don't like seeing this like software for children constantly trying to coerce you into like putting in your payment details. It's really weird and strange, but my nephew loves it. So he's just doodling around in Roblox, playing all the different games. And I guess part of me wants to just let him roam and have his fun. And another part of me thinks that maybe it's my job somehow to like teach him about this type of exploitation, you know, where there's software that will try to get you to pay for stuff that you don't actually need. And you need to learn to identify that. I don't know. It's complicated. These types of things, I guess they need to be taught, but I haven't figured out how to approach it. And I also feel like his parents should probably be the first ones to have that conversation. I don't know. Anyways, I'm guess I'm just hoping that he will go back to Minecraft so that we can play together. I don't program in CPP says, you missed my question. I'd like to ask it again because I'm writing my own operating system and I feel limited by the PIT plus RTC combo. What timers do you use in Serenity? Oh, you mean like what timer chip? We use HPET. So HPET, this guy, the high performance event timer or whatever it is, high precision or high performance. I forget what it's for. That's the thing that we're using at least. HPET. High precision event timer, that's the thing. Definitely recommend it. Then you can get finer timeouts. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Unlucky AF says, do you have kids? Kook says, if no, do you want kids? I don't have kids. I have nephews. I got 3 nephews and I love them. And I got SerenityOS. And I mean, I got 3 blood nephews, but then I also have all of my programming nephews and nieces who work on SerenityOS. So I got lots and lots of nephews and nieces. At least that's how I kind of look at it. And it's really nice. And at the moment, I don't know if I would want to have kids of my own. I really enjoy the nephews that I have, but I also enjoy being able to do so much programming. And then Ryder Hitchhike says, what are kids? Also a good question. What are kids? Vishnu says, have you met a miraculous big brain person? I have met some impressively big brain people, but I think the people I've met who have done a lot of impressive work, they were all extremely hard workers. And I don't know that, yeah, I would say like, out of all the people I've met who've done impressive things, 100% of them worked really hard, and whether they were big brain or small brain, it barely factored into it. Let's see. Arthur Hartwig says, "Hi Andreas, how does the garbage collector in libjs work compared to the one in WebKit?" So in libjs, the garbage collector is simpler. It has some stuff in common with the one in WebKit, but ours is a lot simpler. So in SerenityOS, we just have, it's a basic stop the world, mark and sweep garbage collector. There's no generations, and there's no object compaction or copying, stuff like that. And it's conservative. So we do a stack scan. But the WebKit garbage collector is also conservative, but it's a generational GC with parallel marking. So the WebKit garbage collector, at least the last time I looked at it, I haven't looked at it for a few years now, but last time I looked at it, they spawn multiple threads to mark the object graph. So they parallelize the marking step, and then they do sweeping is incremental, and as I recall, they do like these they have Eden collections and full collections. So Eden collections only look at recent objects or new objects. So they're much smaller scope collections, and they're a lot faster. So they do those very, very frequently, and then full collections every now and then. And the garbage collector in libjs only does full collections because there's no separation of new and old objects. And there's I'm forgetting a million things now, but I would say they're pretty similar to each other in overall design, minus the fact that the WebKit one is generational, and that's actually something I would love to have in the Serenity libjs garbage collector as well, but it's going to take some effort to actually do. Somebody was looking into generational GC a while back, but then gave up on it. I forget who that was. Maybe that was Agni. Anyway, and you know, the WebKit garbage collector is a lot faster, more performant than ours, because ours is way less mature. Naviot says, what about integrate desktop manager like Gnome KDE in SerenityOS? If you would like to do that, please do it. That's not really something I would like to do, because SerenityOS is a system that builds everything itself. So taking in an external desktop and turning it into yet another GNU desktop or whatever, that doesn't sound like fun to me, I guess. Luke Holder says, hi Andreas, other than JavaScript, are there any other scripting languages available in Serenity? Right, we have a bunch of different ports that you can build. So we have like Lua, Ruby, Python, PHP, and a handful of random esoteric languages and stuff. But in terms of stuff that's part of the system, there's libjs for JavaScript, and then we have the shell as well, which has the shell language. But those are the two main programming languages in the system. Alan's phone channel says, what is SerenityOS? Also, is that built on Ubuntu Mate? SerenityOS is not built on Ubuntu Mate. It is a new operating system, or relatively new, let's say. Let's look at our Wikipedia article. It's a free and open source desktop operating system. And it's basically a completely new homemade Unix-like operating system that takes a lot of visual inspiration from late 90s operating systems like Windows 2000. And we make everything ourselves. It doesn't use like components of Linux or GNU or KDE or anything like that. Like, we build everything ourselves, and it's something that we do for fun, and it's a lot of fun, and that's why people are so, at least that's what I imagine people get so excited about it, that it's fun to do everything ourselves and make this little sand castle together. Joel says, pointers on writing drivers for Serenity. Is there good documentation available for the hardware QEMU virtualizes? I don't really think that there's any good documentation about that. I might be wrong, but with QEMU, it's usually pretty easy to just look at the source. And I've many times when I've worked on any kind of hardware issue with Serenity, I just build QEMU locally and then put in little print statements in their hardware implementations so that I can see what the hardware is doing on the console. That has helped me debug many times. But I don't know of any particular documentation for QEMU specific stuff. Let's see. Celia says, I have a Roblox account from like 2010 and people keep trying to guess the password because I guess the username is cool. I'd take that as a compliment. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Koyan says, I have learned to program using Roblox's their engine. Been part of their development community for a couple of years. There are mostly 15 years old developing games for other kids, so it can get messy. Right, yeah. There's a lot of kids making games for other kids. And I recognize that. And, you know, I understand that there are a lot of people just having fun. It just, it's just with any system where you can make money, there's always that incentive. And whenever that incentive exists, there's going to be people maximizing for it, I guess. And yeah, it definitely leaves a bad taste in my mouth whenever I try anything in Roblox, at least out of the popular things. Maybe there's a list of like less popular but more wholesome parts of Roblox where they don't try to suck from your wallet. I don't know. Let's see. Alexander says, did you ever have any contact with IBM I or ZOS? No, I don't have any experience with IBM operating systems at all. Godly Butcher says, hello, first time catching this live. Just wanted to say you are an inspiration. Well, thank you, Godly Butcher. That is a very metal name, but thank you for saying that. Ryder Hitchhike says, newer generation GC versus older generation GC. Most objects die young. Yeah, that's true. Most objects do die young. And that's certainly what I've observed in Serenity as well. We have a lot of transient environment objects, for example. So like whenever you make a function call, you set up a temporary environment for the function scope. And then when you exit the function, then that environment is typically garbage at that point. So you just throw away the object, and those types of objects tend to dominate our GC pauses at the moment. And it would definitely be cool to have some sort of optimized GC that can handle all of these objects better. Although it would be even better if we could find a way to elide environment allocations so that you didn't need to create a function environment. And you know, there are many ways that you can statically prove that, oh, this function isn't actually going to need an environment object because it only accesses the arguments in certain ways that don't necessitate having an environment set up. Things like that. But we don't do optimization of that at the moment. Nuki Loco says, what do you think of Vim bindings? Do you mean like in my editor? So I've set up Vim bindings in every editor I've tried because I like using Vim on the command line. but I find that they always slow me down when I try to set up like C-Line or QCreator or any IDE like that with Vim bindings. I just go slower than if I don't have them. I don't know why. It just, to me, it just slows me down. And I guess I have nothing against them. It's just that they're not fast for me. I'm faster without them. Kook says, what does it take to run external software on Serenity? For example, how'd you get something like Firefox running? I guess for one, you would have to implement the libc and some graphics API, etc. So we have a whole bunch of ports already. If you look in the ports directory here, you can find lots of different software that's external software that has been ported to Serenity, so it works on Serenity. And really the story behind getting them to work is different in each case. But most of it tends to revolve around, well, you know, this program depends on these other 3 libraries. So first we have to go and make those work on Serenity, and then we can make this thing work on Serenity. And getting stuff to work, typically, at least in the past, has been adding missing functionality to libc, to the kernel, maybe libpthread, or the math library, and fixing little bugs, weird behaviors that we have. For something like Firefox, they have a pretty huge and nasty dependency graph as far as I know. So you would have to port a lot of libraries before you can even do Firefox. I think you would have to do like glib, GTK, freetype, you know, all that whole graph of stuff. Lots of other stuff. I don't actually know, but you know, each of those is going to take some time to figure out what's missing, and it can definitely be done. Like, no doubt, you can get Firefox or Chrome to run on SerenityOS if you wanted to, but it doesn't sound like fun to me. Ryder Hitchhike says, that person didn't give up on it, they just took a temporary hiatus. The primary problem is that JS is so dynamic, you need to basically read the programmer's mind and prepare for object extension at any time. Okay, I think Ryder Hitchhike just outed themselves as Agni. Nice to have you here. Vishnu says, if you have a big project and you love it, that is so much fun. But how do you deal with the thought that there might be other projects/ideas that can be fun also? Afraid to sink lot time in one thing. Honestly, I think if you're doing something and you're having just a ball, like you're just having so much fun, why worry that you could be having fun with something else? I don't know, that seems really weird to me, that if I'm just having the time of my life working on something, the last thing on my mind is, oh, I need to do something else because it might be even more fun. Like, I'm just going to enjoy the moment. But I guess I can see how you can get caught up thinking that, well, what if the grass is even greener somewhere else? And maybe it is, but I think it's nice to stay in the moment and actually improve and continue to improve something that you've started on, because I know it's fun to start new things, but it's a lot more rewarding to continue working on something and actually see it through until it becomes something real, I guess. It's a bit like, you know, it's fun to make babies, but I'm sure it's even more rewarding to see them grow up, if that makes sense, to raise them, you know? Let's see. Nuki Loco says, does SerenityOS have any binding APIs to allow other programming languages / scripting languages to easily connect to SerenityOS? At the moment, we do not have any official bindings for other languages. There have been experimental bindings for JavaScript in the past. I've also seen experimental bindings for C#, I think it was, or Mono. Jake had a demo of like a mono application doing GUI stuff, but none of that, at least so far, never made it into the repository. So I don't know. I don't know what the shape of it is. Let's see. Ludwig says, the old Intel machine ran it much smoother. Is there any chance we'll ever be able to compile Serenity for ARM processors? P.S. Are there any attempts at high DPI while I have you? Also, thanks. High DPI is already in the system, so you can switch your monitor over to 2x mode, for example, if you want to run in 2x mode. Clearly, there are bugs. Even more bugs than before, actually. What the heck happened to high DPI? Oh my goodness, that is not very good. I think that must have broken in the recent changes to the way we do mode setting. Supercomputer, if you are here in the stream, Liav, did you see that issue? If you turn on 2x mode, it seems to mess up. We need to debug that. I think that's a recent regression. There's definitely a chance that we would compile on ARM processors. There's already an effort ongoing for that. There were patches just a few days ago, or was it yesterday? Arch. Let's see, ARM. I feel like I saw, was it somebody named Firefox 3 something? I know that there was somebody doing a bunch of ARM stuff, but I don't remember what their name was. Oh, here. Timon? Okay, so Timon was doing AR64 stuff within the last few days. Yeah, so there's definitely ongoing work on ARM support. It's just it's still very early, and if you're interested in working on that, then do join up on Discord with the people who are looking into it, because I'm sure that they would love to have more help. Let's see. Gustavo says, Andreas, would you use C++ for server-side stuff? Maybe. I guess it depends on what I'm trying to do on the server side. Luke says, one thing I have nostalgia for from the same visual era as Windows 2000 is Visual Basic 6. Being able to draw buttons and components on the screen and binding code to them was so fun. Would be so cool to build that into Serenity. So I totally agree that I also feel nostalgic about that. I really enjoyed Visual Basic 6 and programming in that way back in those times. But I tried to recreate it twice in Serenity, and both times it just didn't end up going anywhere and nobody wanted to use it for anything. It seems like, or at least the observation I made, is that it's just not the ideal way to program, because it's nicer to express ourselves in text and describe user interfaces with text rather than using GUI tools and drawing them out. So while that was, I don't know, kind of fun and it was a nice throwback to something I grew up with, I found myself, I just don't want to work this way. So we ended up deleting those like form designer applications that we've had, two of them. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't have a visual design tool for the system that we have. And we do actually have a visual design tool for it, just that at least at the moment, it's sort of just shows you what you're working with rather than allowing you to draw stuff with visual tools. I mean, we do have the playground tool, right, where you can type out a GUI here and it will show up on the right-hand side. This seems to be closer to how we actually want to work, because I've made tons of UIs with this app I know other people have used this to create UIs as well. So I don't know. It's really interesting when you explore nostalgia and you don't just like bask in the nostalgia, but I guess you actually explore it and see where it takes you. And like, well, this thing that I remember fondly, would I actually want to do it again? You try to do it again and it's less fun than you thought it would be. And sometimes it can be hard to be honest about that. Like when you discover that, well, maybe this wasn't so great. Maybe what we have now is actually nicer to work with. At least I've struggled with that. It's like I want to hold on to the idea that something was better than it really was. Anyway, I think there's room for some cool tools here, and I just think that we need to have sort of this. It needs to be integrated with this live text view of what the resulting UI description text actually looks like. That seems to be important to us, at least. Let's see. Addy says, general programming question, Andreas. Do you have to be good at maths to get into C programming? Nah, not really. I don't think so. I definitely don't consider myself to be good at math. I am, you know, I have like a high school level of math, basically, myself. I dropped out of high school and I didn't study math on my own after that, really, to any serious degree. So, and if you think I do okay, then I can tell you based that there's a data point for you, at least. Like you can definitely get to where I am with high school dropout level of math. Alex K says, since you used to work on KDE, how come you don't use it anymore? Do you disagree with the direction it has taken? Are you afraid Serenity could grow into something that you disagree with if you give up too much control? I'm not just afraid of it. I'm certain that it could grow into something I would disagree with if I gave up too much control. I think projects like this need a strong vision and a strong voice of somebody who's willing to say yes and no to maintain that vision. And sometimes, you know, even if people want to pull in another direction, like we need to maintain that original vision for what it is. And in the case of KDE, I guess I would say that yeah, that's kind of accurate. I didn't like what happened when they started work on KDE 4. So back in 2006, around there, they decided that because Qt had come out with Qt 4, a new version of Qt that was not directly source compatible with Qt 3, KDE has this tradition of like whenever Qt puts out a new major release, they will port KDE to the new Qt version. And for KDE 4, they decided to do a lot of radical changes. And I remember at the time, while they were sort of brainstorming KDE 4, Apple had recently put out a new version of Mac OS X with, I think it was Dashboard. So they had like these desktop widgets and stuff like that. That was all the rage. And Vista was coming out as well. And all of the talk about KDE 4 was like, oh, how do we get widgets onto the desktop? And I want to have a cool weather applet, and I want to have my dictionary applet and my calculator applet. And I just wanted to have my taskbar, my windows, and my little desktop with a home folder or something on it. I don't know. I just wanted to, I like this paradigm. Like, I feel like this is very simple, understandable, efficient. I like it. And everybody around me in KDE until that time had been in complete agreement that, yeah, this is what we're doing. We're just making a simple, you know, taskbar desktop window UI. And then suddenly it all changed and people became a little bit widget crazy, and I didn't love it. So that kind of drove me away. I lost interest in the project back then. And of course, this is ancient history at this point. It's like 16 years ago. But yeah, that's basically what happened. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Sophia says, office hours is good vibes time. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Firefox 317 says, Timon is my name. Cool. Yes, I did not know that. Well, hello, Timon. How's it going? That is a very cool name. By the way, I'm sure you get it all the time, but I only know of one Timon from the animal kingdom. One of my favorite characters ever. But yeah, thank you for working on ARM support. That's awesome. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Kook says, you absolutely don't need to be good at maths for programming. It's such a lie. I think it's a little bit of a lie. Yeah. I think it comes from the same place as these people who perpetuate the idea that you have to do lead code. It's almost like, I guess people think that other people coming into the field have to have the same types of specific expertise that they do. Because, I mean, we're all biased towards whatever we happen to be good at and knowledgeable about. It's just natural. But I think it's not a great thing to be biased about. Like especially if you're part of your job responsibility is hiring more people for your team, you don't just want to look for people who are great at the things that you care about and great at things that you're great at. You want to find people who are good at other stuff. And that's something that I enjoyed when I interviewed at Apple, for example. I really felt like they actually valued people with like different backgrounds and different skill sets and diversity of opinion, diversity of thought. And I've had the very opposite impression at other places where I have interviewed, where they're looking for a very specific type of person with specific skill sets, specific opinions. And I guess I would say math is one of those things. You definitely don't need it. I'm sure it's helpful for you, but you can get by without it just fine. Skyrising says, required math knowledge really depends on what you're going to program. For graphics programming, linear algebra knowledge is really useful. For other areas, not so much. Absolutely right. Of course, depending on the domain, right? If you're going to do something, you're going to do work that is math heavy, of course you need to have a decent understanding of math if it is relevant to the work. But if you are going to make, CRUD web shop app number 2096, you don't necessarily need to be great with these things. It's important to contextualize what it is that you're actually going to do, and I guess contextualize your expectations of other people based on what they're going to be doing. Let's see. Joseph says, got Serenity running for the first time last week. Was weird and awesome to suddenly see it running on my machine, not a YouTube video. Yes, that is awesome. I love that the system remains easy to build. It's really easy to get it set up. Sure, it takes a moment to build it nowadays. When I first started, it took less than 3 seconds to build the whole thing. But that's what happens when you grow. But it's still really easy to put it together, and it's nice to hear that new people are still having that feeling regularly that they try the system for the first time and they get to see it, and I don't know, it gives me the good vibes. As Sophia was saying earlier, just good vibes. Let's see. Vishnu says, I know some very basic C++, but not everything, especially all of its object-oriented stuff. Can I still get hired for C++ positions, or is it expected of me to know all of C++'s features? You are absolutely not expected to know all of C++'s features. I think there is a vanishingly small number of people who know all of the language features. I don't know, not many people do. And you don't need to know everything. You need to know the basics for sure. And you need to know how to find out more. Like if there's something that you don't know, you need to know how to figure that out. Once you know that, once you know where to go for reference, like how to look up things in the spec or how to go to c++.com or whatever, CPP reference, you'll be fine. Megan Nagy says, what book would you recommend to start learning modern C++? I don't know, actually. I really don't. I haven't read any books about modern C++, so I couldn't tell you what's a good one. I don't read enough books to really be giving out any kind of recommendations. Sorry. Maybe somebody in the chat knows a good recommendation. Man, I have to admit, I am having a little bit of a headache here. So I think I'm going to have to wrap it up and rest a bit. But I will say that it's been really nice to have office hours. And it's really nice of you all to come here. Sorry for ducking out early, but I have to take care of that. So what do I always say? I always say, if you end up working on SerenityOS this weekend, then please come hang out with us on Discord and share some screenshots or thoughts about what you're working on. We'd love to see them. And I'm just going to go rest a bit. And if I don't see you on Discord, then I'll just see you next time. Bye.